The shy alien princess tried to enter my quarters, unable to contain herself any longer. Kang Do-hyun had never expected to live aboard an alien starship. Yet here he was, walking through corridors made of something that looked like living crystal and smelled faintly of flowers he could not name. The Volanthi Imperial Starship Eternal Grace was the most beautiful vessel in the known galaxy, and Do-hyun felt like a clumsy tourist every time he bumped into a floating decoration or accidentally triggered a door meant for someone twice his height. He was a cultural attach, which was a fancy way of saying he answered questions about Earth and tried not to offend anyone while doing it. Humanity had joined the Galactic Concord only 18 months ago, and most alien species still viewed humans with a mixture of curiosity and fear. After all, humans came from a death world, a planet filled with extreme weather, predators with too many teeth, and plants that could kill you just for touching them. Do-hyun found this reputation amusing because back on Earth, he had been afraid of spiders. "Ambassador Kang," the ship's MI announced in a melodic voice, "your quarters have been reassigned to Section 7, Corridor 12, Suite 42. Do-hyun paused mid-step and frowned at the ceiling, which was where the AI seemed to live. "Reassigned? I just unpacked yesterday. Apologies for the inconvenience. A clerical error placed you in the engineering staff quarters. Your new location is in the Royal Wing, befitting your diplomatic status." The Royal Wing. Do-hyun felt his stomach tighten with anxiety because the Royal Wing meant proximity to the Volanthi Imperial family, and proximity to royalty meant more chances to accidentally start an intergalactic incident. He gathered his belongings, a single duffel bag because humans traveled light, and made his way through the winding passages of the great ship. The Volanthi were a graceful species, tall and slender with skin that ranged from pale blue to deep violet. Their eyes were large and expressive, and their movements flowed like water. Next to them, Do-hyun felt like a stumbling boulder. His new quarters were surprisingly spacious, with a window that looked out into the endless stars. He dropped his bag on the bed and let out a long breath. "Not bad," he muttered to himself. "Not bad at all." What Do-hyun did not know was that someone was watching him. Princess Selyara Valthenis stood behind a decorative pillar approximately 30 meters down the corridor. Her heart, she had two beating so fast she thought they might burst from her chest. She was the third daughter of Emperor Valthenis, which meant she was important enough to attend every boring ceremony but not important enough for anyone to care about her opinions. She had spent most of her life in libraries, reading about distant worlds and dreaming of adventures she would never have. And then the humans had arrived. Selyara had been fascinated from the first moment she saw the footage of human diplomats stepping onto the Concorde station. They were so strange, so solid, so wonderfully terrifying. They ate poison for pleasure. They engaged in something called exercise that looked like voluntary torture. They showed their teeth when happy, which was a threat display in 17 different species. But most fascinating of all was their emotional openness. Humans smiled at strangers. They touched each other casually. They said exactly what they felt without layers of protocol and hidden meaning. Selyara had studied human culture for months, reading every document she could find, watching every recording available in the Imperial archives. And then her older sister, Princess Valindra, had done something terrible. Valindra had noticed Selyara's obsession with humans, and being the meddlesome creature she was, she had arranged for the human attached to be housed in the Royal Wing. "You wanted to study humans," Valindra had said with a wicked smile. "Now you can study one up close." Selyara had nearly fainted, and now here she was, hiding behind a pillar like a frightened child, watching the human unpack his strange belongings. He was not particularly tall for a human, but he was still broader than any Volanthi male. His hair was dark and slightly messy, and his skin was a warm brown that reminded Celiara of the wooden artifacts in the museum. He hummed while he worked, a strange tuneless sound that humans apparently made when content. It was adorable. Celiara took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the pillar. She would introduce herself. She was a princess of the Volanthi Empire, and she would not be reduced to stalking a human through the corridors of her own family ship. She walked 3 steps forward. The human turned toward the door. Celiara dove behind a potted plant. Her face burned with embarrassment as she crouched among the leaves, her ceremonial robes tangling around her legs. What was she doing? This was undignified. This was ridiculous. The door to the human's quarters slid shut, and Celiara slowly emerged from her hiding spot, picking leaves out of her hair. "Your Highness?" Celiara spun around to find her attendant, an elderly Volanthi named Counselor Mirth, staring at her with barely concealed amusement. "I was inspecting the plant," Celiara said quickly, "for parasites." "Of course, Your Highness. Shall I inform the botanical staff of your concerns?" "That will not be necessary." Mirth fell into step beside her as Celiara retreated down the corridor, her dignity in tatters. "If I may observe," Mirth said gently, "you have been researching humans quite extensively these past months. Perhaps a formal introduction would satisfy your curiosity better than botanical inspection?" Celiara felt her face grow even hotter. "I have no idea what you mean." Mirth simply smiled, the knowing smile of someone who had watched Celiara grow from a shy child into an equally shy adult. "Of course, Your Highness. My mistake entirely." That night, Celiara lay in her quarters and stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of her humiliation. Tomorrow, she promised herself, tomorrow she would speak to him properly. She had made this promise before, many times, about many things. But something about the human with the warm smile and the strange humming made her want to actually keep it this time. Far away in his own quarters, Kang Do-yoon wondered briefly about the rustling he had heard in the corridor. Probably nothing, he decided, probably just the ship's systems. He had no idea how wrong he was. The shy alien princess tried to enter my quarters. Unable to contain herself any longer, the formal banquet was exactly the kind of event that made Kang Do-yoon want to hide in his quarters and pretend to be sick. 300 Volanthi nobles filled the grand hall, all of them dressed in flowing robes that probably cost more than his yearly salary. The ceiling above them displayed a live projection of a distant nebula, purple and gold light dancing across the faces of the guests. Do-hyun tugged at his formal uniform black with silver trim, standard diplomatic attire, and tried to remember which fork was for salad. Actually, did the Volanthi even use forks? He had spent weeks studying Volanthi etiquette, but the rules seemed to change depending on who he asked. The only consistent advice was this: do not make direct eye contact with unmarried nobility, do not touch anyone without permission, and do not stand too close. Unfortunately, Do-hyun kept forgetting. He smiled at everyone because that was what humans did. He held doors for people because that was polite. He made eye contact during conversations because looking away seemed rude. What he did not realize was that each of these actions carried very different meanings in Volanthi culture. A smile with teeth showing was a challenge. Holding a door was an offer of service usually made by romantic suitors. Direct eye contact with an unmarried noble was practically a marriage proposal. By the time dinner was served, Do-hyun had accidentally proposed to 6 different people and challenged the Minister of Agriculture to a duel. Princess Celiara watched all of this from across the hall, her hearts pounding with a mixture of horror and fascination. The human was a disaster. A beautiful, charming, completely oblivious disaster. Every noble in the room was whispering about him. Some were offended, some were intrigued, and more than a few seemed genuinely flustered by his attention. Celiara felt an uncomfortable twinge in her chest that she refused to identify as jealousy. He smiled at Lady Virith for 3 full seconds. Her sister Valindra whispered gleefully. She nearly swooned into the soup. "I did not notice," Celiara lied. "Of course you did not. You have only been staring at him all evening." Celiara wanted to disappear into the floor. The banquet continued with course after course of elaborate dishes, each more exotic than the last. Do-hyun gamely tried everything, though his face did interesting things when he encountered the fermented sea creatures. Celiara picked at her own food, too nervous to eat properly. The human was seated only 4 tables away, and every time he laughed at something, she felt her pulse spike. This was ridiculous. She was a princess. She had received the finest education in the empire. She spoke 12 languages and could recite the complete history of the Volanthi people from memory. But put her within 50 meters of one human, and she became a stammering mess. The dessert course arrived, and with it came disaster. Celiara reached for her glass, just as a server passed behind her, and the collision sent a decorative garnish flying directly into her throat. She had not meant to eat it. The crystallized flour was purely ornamental, but now it was lodged in her airway, and she could not breathe. Panic seized her as she clutched at her throat, unable to make a sound. The nobles around her continued their conversations, oblivious to her distress. Volanthi did not make scenes, and asking for help was considered desperately gauche. Black spots danced in her vision. And then suddenly, there was warmth at her back and a firm pressure between her shoulder blades. "Breathe out," a voice said, close to her ear. "Calm and steady. I have got you." A hand struck her back once, twice, 3 times with practiced precision, and the crystallized flour flew from her throat and landed in someone's wine glass. Celiara gasped for air, her whole body shaking, and turned to find Kang Do-yoon standing behind her with concern written across his face. "Are you all right?" he asked, one hand still resting on her back. "That looked serious. Should I call for a medic?" Celiara opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She was too busy noticing that his hand was still touching her. In Volanthi culture, touching someone's back was an act of profound intimacy. It was something lovers did in private, something that signified trust and protection, and a dozen other things that made Celiara's face burn like a star. The entire hall had gone silent. 300 nobles stared at the human and the princess, their expressions ranging from shock to scandal to barely concealed delight. "Your Highness," Councillor Mirith appeared at her elbow, speaking in a strained voice. "Perhaps you should retire to recover from your ordeal." "Yes," Celiara managed to squeak. "Yes, I think that would be wise." She fled the banquet hall without looking back, her robes billowing behind her, her heart's threatening to beat right out of her chest. Do-hyun watched her go with confusion written across his face. Had he done something wrong? He had just been trying to help. The whispers around him grew louder, and he caught fragments of conversation that made no sense. "Did you see, in front of everyone, the human touched the princess? Scandalous." An elderly Volanthi appeared at Do-hyun's side, and his expression was not friendly. "Human," the alien said coldly. "I am Crown Prince Valeth, eldest son of the Emperor. I would speak with you regarding your conduct this evening." Do-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. He had met the Crown Prince only briefly during formal introductions, but even then, the man had radiated an aura of authority that made Do-hyun want to stand straighter. "Of course, Your Highness," Do-hyun said carefully. "Have I given offense?" Valeth's eyes narrowed. "Your advances toward my sister have not gone unnoticed. The Princess Celiara is 3rd in line for the throne, and her honor is not to be trifled with." "Advances?" Do-hyun repeated blankly. "I am sorry, but I do not understand." She was choking, and "You touched her," Valeth interrupted. in front of the entire court. Do you understand what that means in our culture? Do-hyun felt the blood drain from his face. He had studied Valanti customs, but clearly not well enough. I meant no disrespect, he said earnestly. In human culture, helping someone who is choking is simply the right thing to do. I would have done the same for anyone. Valis studied him for a long moment, and something in his stern expression softened just slightly. I believe you speak the truth, the Crown Prince said finally. Humans are strange creatures. But I warn you, Attach, be careful with my sister. She's gentle and easily wounded. If your attentions are not serious, withdraw them now before greater harm is done. With that, the Crown Prince swept away, leaving Do-hyun standing alone in a sea of whispering nobles. Attention serious? What was happening? Do-hyun suddenly realized he needed to learn much more about Valanti culture, and he needed to learn it quickly, because somehow, without meaning to, he had gotten himself into very deep trouble indeed. The shy alien princess tried to enter my quarters, unable to contain herself any longer. 3 days had passed since the banquet incident, and Princess Selyara had not left her quarters. She lay on her bed surrounded by datapads, each one displaying information about human customs, human courtship rituals, and human body language. She had read the same passages so many times that she could recite them from memory. Humans value directness. Humans appreciated honesty. Humans preferred clear communication over subtle hints. In theory, this should make everything easier. All Selyara had to do was walk up to the human, explain that she found him fascinating, and ask if he would like to spend time with her. Simple, except every time she tried to imagine doing this, her throat closed up and her hands started shaking. Your Highness, Counselor Mirith said gently from the doorway, you cannot hide forever. The court is beginning to talk. Let them talk, Selyara muttered into her pillow. They are saying that the human's touch left you traumatized. Your brother has suggested filing a formal complaint with the Galactic Concord. Selyara sat up so fast she nearly fell off the bed. He cannot do that. Do-hyun did nothing wrong. He saved my life. Mirith's expression remained carefully neutral. Then, perhaps you should tell him that yourself, before this situation spirals further out of control. Selyara knew her attendant was right. The longer she hid, the worse the rumors would become. If she did not act soon, the human might be sent away in disgrace, and it would be entirely her fault. She took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. You are right, she said firmly. I will speak to him today. I will explain everything clearly and directly, just like humans do. Mirith smiled. Excellent, Your Highness. I shall inform the staff that you are recovered. Selyara spent 2 hours preparing. She chose her finest robes, deep purple with silver embroidery, and arranged her hair in an elegant style that had taken her attendants 40 minutes to perfect. She rehearsed her speech in front of a mirror until she could deliver it without stumbling. Finally, she was ready. She walked through the corridors of the royal wing with her head held high, her heart beating steadily, her confidence building with every step. She reached the door to the human's quarters. She raised her hand to knock, and then the door slid open. Do-hyun stood there holding a bag of recycling, clearly on his way out. He looked at her with surprise, then smiled that warm human smile that made her brain stop functioning. Princess Selyara, are you feeling better? I was worried after. Selyara made a sound that was not quite a word and fled down the corridor. She did not stop running until she reached the observation deck, where she collapsed against a window and tried to remember how to breathe. That had been attempt number 1. The next day, Selyara tried again. This time, she brought a gift, a ceremonial crystal from the royal collection, meant to symbolize respect and gratitude. She had rehearsed a beautiful speech about how she appreciated his help at the banquet and how she wished to know him better. She stood outside his door for 15 minutes, gathering her courage. Finally, she stepped forward and pressed the chime. The door opened, and there he was, looking slightly confused but genuinely pleased to see her. "Princess, please, come in. Celiara thrusted toward him with shaking hands. "I wanted to give you this," she blurted out, "as thanks for saving my life." Why was she speaking in fragments? This was not how the speech was supposed to go. Do-hyun reached for the crystal, but Celiara's hands were trembling so badly that it slipped from her grasp. The crystal hit the floor and shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. Celiara stared at the destruction at her feet, a priceless artifact, 400 years old, destroyed because she could not control her nerves. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I am sorry," she whispered, and then she turned and ran away again. That had been attempt number 2. Attempt number 3 came 2 days later, and it was somehow even worse. Celiara had prepared no speech this time. She had decided to simply knock on the door and let the conversation happen naturally. Surely she could manage that much. She knocked. The door opened, but it was not Do-hyun who answered. It was another human, a woman with bright red hair and curious eyes. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. Celiara's mind went completely blank. Who was this person? Why was she in Do-hyun's quarters? Were they romantically involved? Had Celiara completely misread the situation? "I seem to be lost," Celiara heard herself say. "Could you direct me to the botanical gardens?" The woman looked puzzled, understandably, since the botanical gardens were on the opposite side of the ship. "Sure, you go down this corridor. Take a left in." "Thank you," Celiara interrupted, already backing away. "Most helpful. Goodbye." She fled once more, her humiliation complete. Later that evening, Do-hyun sat in his quarters with his colleague, Dio. Sarah Chun, both of them sharing a pot of tea. "The strangest thing happened earlier," Sarah said. "An alien princess showed up at your door looking for the botanical gardens. Seemed very nervous." Do-hyun frowned. "Princess Celiara? She was here? Is that her name?" "Pretty thing, very shy. She practically teleported away when I tried to give her directions." Do-hyun thought about all the strange encounters he had experienced since arriving on this ship. The princess watching him from behind pillars. Her dramatic exit from the banquet. The broken crystal outside his door that the cleaning staff had mentioned. A suspicion began to form in his mind. "Computer," he said aloud, "access the cultural database. I want to know about Volanti courtship customs." The AI responded immediately, displaying a wealth of information on his screen. Do-hyun read with growing astonishment. In Volanti culture, direct romantic approaches were almost unheard of. Instead, interested parties would engage in elaborate rituals of proximity, appearing near the object of their affection, offering gifts, seeking opportunities for interaction. "Oh," Do-hyun said softly. "Oh, what?" Sarah asked. "I think the princess might be interested in me. Romantically." Sarah nearly choked on her tea. "The alien princess? You cannot be serious." But Do-hyun was very serious. Everything made sense now. Her constant appearances, her nervous behavior, her gifts, her attempts to visit his quarters. She was not afraid of him. She was attracted to him. The question was, what was he going to do about it? Do-hyun thought about Princess Celiara, her gentle eyes, her sweet shyness, the courage it must have taken for someone so reserved to keep trying despite her obvious terror. He found himself smiling. Perhaps it was time for him to make a move of his own. Human style. The shy alien princess tried to enter my quarters. Unable to contain herself any longer, Princess Celiara had given up. She walked through the royal gardens with her head down, her heart heavy, and her hope completely extinguished. 3 attempts to speak with the human. 3 humiliating failures. Clearly, the universe was trying to tell her something. She was not meant for romance. She was not meant for adventure. She was meant to spend her life in libraries, reading about experiences she would never have, dreaming dreams that would never come true. The gardens were beautiful this time of cycle, filled with bioluminescent flowers that pulsed gently in the artificial twilight. Usually, Celiara found peace here, but today even the flowers seemed to mock her. "Your Highness?" Celiara froze. That voice. That wonderfully warm human voice. She turned slowly, her heart beginning to race, and found Kang Dong-yun standing on the path behind her. He wore simple civilian clothes, dark trousers, and a soft blue shirt, and his smile was gentle and kind. "May I walk with you?" he asked. Celiara opened her mouth, fully expecting her voice to fail her once again. But somehow, miraculously, a single word emerged. "Yes." They fell into step together, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were their footsteps on the crystal path and the soft hum of the ship's systems. Celiara's mind raced. Why was he here? What did he want? Should she apologize for the broken crystal? Should she explain her bizarre behavior? Should she run away again? "I spoke with the ship's cultural database," Do-hyun said suddenly. "I learned some interesting things about Volanthi customs." Celiara felt her face grow warm. Oh no, did he know? Had he figured out what a fool she had been making of herself? "I realized," Do-hyun continued, "that I have been accidentally causing quite a lot of confusion since I arrived. All those smiles and handshakes and door holding. I had no idea what they meant in your culture." Celiara relaxed slightly. Perhaps he was only talking about the general scandal, not her specifically. But I also realized something else. Or perhaps not. Do-hyun stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes, such strange human eyes, with their small pupils and expressive depths, met hers directly. "I realize that you have been trying to talk to me," he said softly, "and that I have been making it very difficult. I'm sorry for that." Celiara felt tears prick at her eyes. "You have nothing to apologize for. I am the one who keeps running away like a frightened child." "You are not a child," Do-hyun said firmly. "You are a princess who has been dealing with an oblivious human who did not understand your customs. That must have been frustrating." He took a step closer, and Celiara's heart skipped simultaneously. "In human culture," he said, "when someone wants to get to know another person, they usually just ask. Directly. It can seem blunt, but it removes a lot of confusion." He took a breath. "So I am asking, Princess Celiara, would you like to spend some time with me? Not as a political obligation, not as a diplomatic duty. Just as two people who might enjoy each other's company." Celiara stared at him. Was this really happening? Was the human, the wonderful, terrifying, perfect human, actually asking to court her? "Yes," she whispered. Then, more firmly, "Yes, I would like that very much." Do-hyun's smile brightened like a sunrise. "Wonderful. Then would you do me the honor of joining me for dinner tonight? In my quarters. I would like to cook for you." Cook for her. Humans prepared their own food as an act of affection. Celiara had read about this custom, but she had never dreamed she would experience it. "I would be honored," she managed to say. That evening, Celiara stood outside Do-hyun's door for the 4th time, but everything was different now. This time, she had been invited. This time, she knew he was expecting her. This time, when she pressed the chime, she did not feel the urge to flee. The door opened, and Do-hyun welcomed her inside with that warm smile. His quarters smelled incredible rich and savory, with hints of spice that made her nose tingle. "I hope you do not mind Korean food," he said, guiding her to a small table he had set up near the window. It is comfort food from my homeland. I cannot promise it will be gentle on Volanti taste buds. Celiara sat down and watched as Dohin moved around the small kitchen area, plating dishes with obvious care. There was something intimate about watching someone cook, she realized. Something vulnerable and real. "Tell me about yourself," he said as he worked. "Not the princess. The person." Celiara blinked. No one had ever asked her that before. "I am the third daughter," she said slowly. "Which means I am important enough to attend ceremonies, but not important enough to matter. I have spent most of my life in libraries, reading about places I will never visit and people I will never meet." Dohin set a plate in front of her colorful vegetables, fragrant rice, and strips of meat in a dark sauce. "That sounds lonely," he said, sitting across from her. "It was," Celiara admitted, "until the humans came. Suddenly, there was something new to study, something exciting and strange and wonderful." She looked down at her plate, embarrassed. "I read everything I could find about your species. I watched every recording. And then my sister arranged for you to be housed nearby, and I thought perhaps I could actually meet one of you, but every time I tried, I just ran away." Dohyun finished gently. "Yes." He laughed, not a mocking laugh, but a warm, understanding one. "I think that is very brave, actually. Trying again and again, even though you were scared. That takes courage." Celiara had never thought of it that way. "Try the food," Dohyun encouraged. "But be warned, humans enjoy something called capsaicin that most species find overwhelming." Celiara took a careful bite of the meat, and her eyes went wide. Heat exploded across her tongue, followed by layers of flavor she had never experienced before. It was intense, almost painful, and absolutely delicious. "This is incredible," she gasped. "How do humans eat this regularly?" "Practice," Dohyun grinned. "And a certain stubbornness that might be genetic." They talked for hours. Celiara told him about her studies, her dreams, her frustration with court politics. Dohyun shared stories of Earth, its oceans and mountains, its chaotic beauty, its billions of humans all living their complicated lives. He told her about his own struggles, being overlooked in his career, never quite fitting in, finding purpose in the diplomatic corps almost by accident. "I think we are similar," Celiara said quietly. "Both of us invisible in our own worlds." Dohyun reached across the table and, very gently, touched her hand. In Volanti culture, this was an act of profound significance. But he did it so naturally, so kindly, that it did not feel scandalous. It felt right. "Maybe," he said. "We do not have to be invisible to each other." Celiara turned her hand over and interlaced her fingers with his. Her hearts were racing, but for the first time, it was not from fear. It was from hope. The shy alien princess tried to enter my quarters, unable to contain herself any longer. The summons arrived at dawn. Kang Do-hyun stared at the holographic message floating above his datapad, his breakfast growing cold and forgotten. The words were formal, elaborate, and unmistakably serious. The human cultural attached Kang Do-hyun is commanded to appear before His Imperial Majesty Emperor Valthenis regarding matters of state and honor. Attendance is mandatory. Refusal will be considered an act of diplomatic hostility. Do-hyun let out a long breath. He had known this was coming. News of his dinner with Princess Celiara had spread through the ship like fire, and now the Emperor himself wanted answers. 2 hours later, Do-hyun stood before the massive doors of the Imperial throne room, trying to remember how to breathe. The doors swung open, and he walked forward into the most intimidating space he had ever seen. The throne room stretched for what seemed like kilometers, its ceiling lost in artificial clouds, its walls lined with ancient banners representing 1,000 years of Volanti history. Hundreds of nobles filled the viewing galleries, their eyes fixed on the small human walking toward the throne. And on that throne sat Emperor Val Thenis. The emperor was ancient by Volanti standards. His blue skin faded to pale silver, his eyes sharp and knowing. He wore robes of pure white embroidered with golden thread, and his presence filled the room like a physical weight. Crown Prince Valus stood to the right of the throne, his expression unreadable. Princess Valindra stood to the left, barely suppressing a smirk. And somewhere in the crowd, though you knew, Princess Celyara was watching. He reached the designated spot, a circle of light on the floor, and bowed deeply in the human style. "Your Imperial Majesty," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I am honored by your summons." The emperor studied him for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Human, you have been on this vessel for 32 cycles. In that time, you have caused more scandal than any diplomat in living memory. You have challenged nobles to duels with your smiles. You have proposed marriage with your eye contact. And you have touched my daughter in front of the entire court." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Now," the emperor continued, "I am told you have invited her to your quarters for a private dinner. I am told you fed her human food and held her hand. Is this true?" Do-hyun lifted his chin. "It is true, Your Majesty." The murmurs grew louder. Several nobles gasped in shock. "And what," the emperor demanded, "are your intentions toward Princess Celyara? Do you seek political advantage? Alliance with the Empire? What does a human want with my daughter?" This was the moment. Do-hyun knew that his next words would determine everything, his future, his career, and possibly the first human-Volanti relationship in history. He chose honesty. "Your Majesty," he said clearly, "I want nothing from the princess except the chance to know her. She is kind, intelligent, and braver than she believes herself to be. I have no interest in political advantage or imperial alliance. I simply enjoy her company, and I believe she enjoys mine." The emperor's eyes narrowed. "You speak boldly for someone standing alone before the might of the Volanti Empire." "I speak honestly," Do-hyun replied. "That is the human way. We do not hide our feelings behind layers of protocol. When we care for someone, we say so. When we want something, we ask for it. I am asking for nothing more than the opportunity to spend time with your daughter, with her consent and yours." Silence fell over the throne room. The nobles seemed to be holding their breath. Even Crown Prince Valeth looked surprised by the human's directness. The emperor leaned forward. "And if I refuse? If I send you away in disgrace and forbid my daughter from ever speaking your name again?" Do-hyun felt his heart sink, but he did not look away. "Then I would go. I would never force myself where I am not wanted. But I would hope that you would ask the princess what she wants before making that decision." "She is a child," the emperor said dismissively. "She does not know what she wants." "I am not a child." Every head in the throne room turned toward the source of that voice. Princess Celyara stepped out from the crowd of nobles, her robes flowing behind her, her expression more determined than anyone had ever seen it. She walked forward until she stood beside Do-hyun, her heart pounding but her voice strong. "I am not a child," she repeated, facing her father. "I am 23 cycles old. I have studied every subject the Empire has to offer. I have read more books than half this court combined. And for the first time in my life, someone has seen me truly see me as a person, not as a title." The emperor stared at his daughter in astonishment. In all her years, Celyara had never spoken publicly, had never challenged anyone, had never done anything to draw attention to herself. "This human," Celyara continued, "has shown me more kindness in a few weeks than this court has shown me in my entire life. He does not care about my rank or my inheritance. He cares about who I am." And she faltered for just a moment, then drew herself up to her full height. And I care about him. If that is a scandal, then let it be a scandal. I am tired of being invisible. I am tired of being silent. For once, I want to choose something for myself. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Do-hyun stared at Selyara with wonder and admiration. This was the woman who had hidden behind pillars, who had dropped crystals and run away in terror. And here she was, standing before the most powerful being in the empire, fighting for what she wanted. She was magnificent. The emperor sat back on his throne, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Then, slowly, a smile spread across the ancient face. It seems, the emperor said quietly, that humans have already had quite an effect on my daughter. She has never spoken so many words in public. She has never defied me so openly. She has never, he paused, and his eyes softened. She has never seemed so alive. He turned his gaze to Do-hyun. Human, you are strange, disruptive, and utterly lacking in proper decorum. But you are also sincere. I can see that much. The emperor raised his hand, and the entire court held its breath. I grant provisional approval for this courtship. You may continue to see my daughter under appropriate supervision for a period of 1 year. At the end of that time, we will revisit this matter. Relief flooded through Do-hyun. He bowed deeply. Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored by your trust. Selyara rushed forward and, to the shock of everyone present, threw her arms around the human in a full embrace. Do-hyun caught her automatically, holding her close, his heart full to bursting. The court erupted in scandalized whispers, but neither of them cared. That evening, Selyara stood outside Do-hyun's quarters one final time. But now there was no fear, no hesitation. She pressed the chime, and when the door opened, she stepped inside without a moment of doubt. Do-hyun took her hand, and together they stood by the window, watching the stars drift by. I cannot believe you did that, he said softly. Standing up to your father in front of everyone. That was incredible. Selyara smiled a real smile, bright and unguarded. I learned it from you. Humans are direct. Humans say what they mean. I decided to try it myself. And how did it feel? She considered the question. Terrifying. And wonderful. I think I would like to do it more often. Do-hyun laughed and pulled her closer. I think we are going to cause a lot of trouble together. Good, Selyara said firmly. I have been well behaved for far too long. Outside the door, Princess Valindra pressed her ear against the wall, desperate for details. What are they saying? I cannot hear anything. Crown Prince Valis pulled her away with a sigh. Leave them alone. You have caused enough mischief already. And far away on Earth, Do-hyun's mother received a message from her son that simply read, I met someone. She is an alien princess. It is a long story. Please do not panic. She panicked. But that, as they say, is a story for another time.